Hello, this is Dr. Mike, and we're taking a look at CIS 2642 pen testing. We're looking at topic 2 at the time of this recording, which is chapter 2 for the textbook on planning and scoping penetration tests. So, very important, not the most exciting thing. You jump into this class hoping you can just be hacking away, but this is actually very critical. So, topic 2 is for chapter 2, and it is, of course, you can see here, we have all the information here, resources and so on. So there's some good information in this chapter. Please look it over. We'll take a look at the summary, make sure I don't forget anything that's important. There is, of course, a pen test contract you will produce as part of your project. So in case we'll take a dive in here, and we're looking at scoping and planning. So first off, what is the assessment type? This is probably the first thing it could be asked, or you could ask, or it could be told. Is it a vulnerability scan? Is it a specific website? Is it a mobile app? More important, is there any compliance base for it? PCI, HIPAA, that's going to really bring in a lot more work to make sure you meet certain standards. So, but understand that right up front is going to allow you to plan ahead for proper testing. Also, is it just yourself? Is it a red team? How are you going to communicate? I've used Signal in the past when Signal app, which is a great app, is a secure app for secure communication. But you might need to communicate passwords, either test passwords or found passwords, PII, things like that, with other members of your team. So how do you want to communicate? How are you going to store these assets? And make sure it's secure, of course. And this is going to allow you, because if you're dealing with HIPAA and you find HIPAA records, you might need to, if you have a record of that or some sort of screenshot or information that has actual patient data, you got to figure out how to handle that. So all this is going to come up in the assessment type. And of course, if it's just a vulnerability scan, then there's no need to go full red team, no social engineering involved, and so on. So again, how are you going to approach the test? Is it a white box, black box, gray box? White box being you have full knowledge of the environment. So maybe you're given, maybe access to source code. Maybe you're given development documents. This might give you some time during your recon phase. You need to just do some studying. In fact, you can study the information as soon as possible. Problems that can bring in a lot of stuff you need to study. It could be pages of stuff. So bookmark some time to look through any documentation. If it's black box, here's our website. You have to come at us, without anything. So you actually would maybe replicate being the attacker. Gray box, a lot of times it could be black box at first. It could end up being gray box. There's times when the test might change, and this is normal. It's possible if you found something really, really high critical, going from a black box, you might need to actually enter into a gray box of type mode where you want to get more information to help them fix the issue. So realize that it's not always clear cut, but it's good at least up front to ask, is this a white box or a black box? And if you don't know what that means, explain to what that means. That's going to help you plan ahead. And there's some adversary tier here. Term script kiddie, which I get the term. Script kiddie being somebody who just runs a tool, doesn't know what it means. I don't like it. It's the fact that we sort of being scripting or tools are bad. They're not. To be an effective pen tester, you got to be able to use your tools effectively. And why do something manually when you can automate it? If you can automate some scanning, automate some sort of work where I can focus on other parts of my test. So scripting is not bad. Script kiddie, you're going to be a script kiddie. I'm still a script kiddie at heart. There's a lot of times you're going to be a script kiddie, and that will come up. But realize that how is the target want me to approach them? Just as a script kiddie-ish idea, like, hey, can I just run some scanning and some tools against you and not get in, or can I get in? Which would be bad if your client or target, you can run a simple tool and get any kind of root shell with a simple SQL injection, SQL map tool, just willy-nilly. And this is going back to what I mentioned before in a separate video on design and pen testing. Your notes are going to be very important, so you can just see how you approach that. But what does the client expect you to come at him as? As activists? Are they very? Is it a political organization? Are they people going to try to bring them down? That might involve some DDoS mitigation. Most time, professional black hat is what you're going to look at. That's probably the one tier that you will probably be operating in. Hence, it's my target might have some sort of financial gain if I can get some kind of account information, kind of information I can sell on the dark web. Organized crime, I don't really have too much like that. And APTs, advanced persistent threats, these are government level things. Usually like, and they give them names like Fuzzy Bear, for example, Russian attacking teams. These are government organized or highly organized threat actors. And the thing to look for that would be the MITRE attack. MITRE attack references APTs a lot. But it's important to know. Maybe you're dealing with a government agency or agency that has government, facing with government or external entities. And you might need to approach them in an APT method. So, coming up at them, and that might tell you up front, like, hey, I need to then look at them with the MITRE attack framework because they expect me to act like, an APT. So, and you can see here, we can see different APTs, advisories. APT 37, for example, uses Windows Code and Victim System. So, again, understanding how you might need to run about your engagement might actually bring in change your process. So, and it's okay to ask that up front. And again, most of the time I think you can have people say, hey, just come at us as maybe a professional black hat level hacker or maybe a hacking group. So they might not know what that means. So, but it's okay at least to sort of, fuss out what it could be, what they expect from you, because if they expect you to come at them as a Chinese, APT, and you're just coming at a script kiddie, then there can be some disconnect on the results you give them. Okay, now the most important stuff, rules of engagement. This is going to be huge. First off, what's your timeline? When does it start? When does it officially end? What systems can I attack? IP addresses, is it an IP address? Is it just a domain name, domain names? A domain name might actually have several IPs behind it. Keep that in mind, with load balancing and things like that. How do you handle data? Be upfront with them. Say, hey, if I get in PII, I will encrypt it, and I will store it in a secure manner. Maybe they don't want you storing it at all. Maybe they don't want you to even, if you see it, don't even touch it. Sometimes maybe you run across and you end up finding that you have HIPAA access now to other patient records. They might not even want any record of that. You might need to do a live demo of it, things like that. So, communication. How are you going to talk? How are you going to talk with the rest of the team? How are you going to talk to the client? And you find yourself, some pen testing, you find yourself having accounts and emails set up with the client's company. So beware, you might need to create accounts and passwords and two-factor authentication for a company you're going to do one pen test with. So there's some overhead there with that. And also any legal concerns. Again, is it HIPAA, PCI? Is there certain frameworks you should be looking at, or certain test approaches that might that might change your scope of work later. So, if possible, can I get information from them? Is it a gray box or a white box test? API documentation, data flow diagrams, configuration information. It's okay to ask for that up front, especially if it's white. If it's a white box test, you should have some sort of login accounts, maybe even admin and a non-admin account. And of course, those should be test accounts. Also, is this a test system? I've run into some pen tests where I'm testing against either an up-and-coming to be production level system, and it's going through the last round of tests. And if it's a test system, that actually could impact how your tests come about. It might be hard to get certain results expecting something behind it. It could be empty databases behind it. It could be test data. So it's something else you might want to look at during your scope of work. Statement of work. So legal things here. Statement of work. What's going to be done? I need you to come in as a vulnerability scan against these two IP addresses, which support this one domain name. I need you to come in as a red team against our company and total. That could be Social engineering is in play. Also, the terms that cover future work. This is like a master service agreement. Big one is also NDA. Expect to have an NDA. If they don't ask for one, you should ask for one. This is up to protect you as a pen tester, because if anything, if they don't expect you, they don't care how you handle stuff. You might say, well, I'm going to put NDA on my own work. I want to disclose this with anybody. So chances are it will come from the client side. Unless, of course, it is a some sort of bug bounty. I'll talk about that in a second. Laws, of course, beware there are certain laws, international laws, use of tools, things like that. So keep that in mind. And probably the biggest law, of course, would be if your pen test has scope of work, a statement of work, or rules of engagement allowing physical pen testing. This is a huge one. If physical pen testing, hence picking locks, checking on physical security, is part of it, you might need to bring in other experts. You definitely want to bring in some lawyers. That is going to be something that is very critical to hash out at the beginning. There was a article years ago posted now about hacking professional hackers, pen testers who were given for county access. They were given the go for do physical pen testing, and they broke into or an attempt to break into the county building. The alarm went off. The state police showed up. They showed them all the documentation showing that they were allowed to do that. But the sheriff showed up and didn't care anything about the documentation and still hauled them to jail. In mind, the sheriff's no one breaks into my building sort of mentality, and that's the sheriff's region. So you have different things, not just state police, local police, sheriff. Oh man, it can be very, very complicated. So make sure you are authorized to run these tools. Make sure it states somewhere that the approving authority is someone who can say, yes, I approve you to run this statement of work with this rules of engagement against this scope of work, these targets, us. There could be third parties involved here. Probably the biggest one of third party will be Amazon or some sort of web service cloud provider. There are rules to use for these things. So it could be they have no idea. Your client says, well, we use Amazon. So you need to actually reach out and find Amazon actually has pen test forms, which are signed by the client and you, and it gets a statement of work. And it's going to allow you your IP address or IP addresses stated in that pen test form access to run these tools. It's good that the web, I keep saying web, cloud companies have some sort of protection in place, but it might get hard for you to test, run any kind of scan, for example. So knowing that up front is going to be very important. And if it's a black box test, and you're like, well, that's what we have in place, and you might find ways to get around that. So understand that your IP address can be shut down, not permanently, but usually for a small period of time. If you're found scanning a Amazon Web Service server, you could get stomped out there. So realize that can come into play. Also, any kind of compliance you need come in again. So data requirements, key management. If you're given certain assets, especially with a white box test, just be aware of these and any compliance you need to do with those. All right, so other parts of this. So probably the biggest thing again is going to be your statement of work, scope and rules. Probably scope and rules of engagement are going to be huge. So on that, we have some stuff in learning activities you can review at the time of this recording. There could be more if this is a future. It goes off in the future here, but there's some worksheets you can use, look at from both SANs. For example, you can look at these rules of engagement worksheets. You get some idea about things you might want to look at. Who's the primary contact? Who's the contact organization? How are you going to contact them? It's important to have someone to talk to. Maybe you're running a scan and you may have inadvertently impacted the system. You want to know someone you can talk to in their support system that knows that you are currently part of an engagement. So how often do they want to be debriefed? And if so, what do they want? Just a status report? How's it going to be? Probably an online meeting, for example. start date, end date. So this is some good information. I'm not going to go through all this. And of course, these are just some sample worksheets from SANS. SANS is a great asset for this, of course. Another good one is this Pen Test Execution Standard. This is a huge, great resource for all through the pen test engagement. You can see pre-engagement here, intelligence. So we'll come back to this a lot. But actually, pre-engagement interactions. Is it a web app pen test? If so, how many web servers are being there? How many login systems, and so on. So you can see there's a lot of stuff you can ask, and hopefully are either answered in the contract information, or maybe no one even thought about it. What about fuzzing? What did the client think about that? You maybe not a lot of DDoS, but fuzzing can sort of, get into that a little bit. What about brute forcing? Things like that. So, do they want to be scanned or not? You'd be surprised. I've had clients say, don't scan us during the daytime. They're scared that, and yeah, some scanners like a Burp Suite full-on active scan can really bring a system down to its knees, especially if it's a test system, or maybe it's not as well rounded system for production. So sometimes, or just it's a great system, but the client only wants you to scan certain parts of the day. So again, this is some examples here. This is a fantastic guide. This is the penteststandard.org. Other things to look at: scope creep. Be very careful here. It's easy for you yourself to say, "Oh man, I can do some more here than I thought," and or the client say, "Well, can you go ahead and also do the email server while you're at it, since that is part of the same data center." It's great to be able to add stuff in, but be aware that you have time constraints. So it's okay to come back and say, "All right, that's fine. Let's add in that email server. However, I need to extend out another week for the end date." Because you just, scope creep it's going to add more work. Be very careful again with scope creep. Know your IP address ranges or IP or domains. That should be clearly labeled. Again, third parties, ISPs, cloud services. If they do social engineering, what is acceptable? Usually the one that's very common is, can you pull off things like a phishing email? But you don't probably want to use certain things like maybe porn, Viagra, or anything like as long as you avoid certain items like that. Free iPod, it's a good funny one. So that's part of the test. Make sure it's clearly defined what levels of social engineering are allowed. Of course, DDoS testing. Most of the time, I gotta be honest, all the tests I've done, I've never been able to allow to do any kind of denial of service testing. But be aware that sometimes if you're running a scan and or maybe a brute force type or a dictionary attack for login, that might have a DDoS flavor to it. Have it cleared out. This, supposed to be said in the contract that if you're allowed to run those things, those might show up as a DDoS test. Don't stop it, please. So, how you gonna get paid? It's a good one. So much at the beginning, so much at the end. Net 30, half up front, and so on. Any recurring payments. Again, and then what the goals are of your test. So this is a fantastic thing here. I'm not going to go through all this. This is in the current shell here. Emergency contact, huge one. Instant response. What happens if something breaks? Who do you interact with outside of the regular test? It could be someone who doesn't know you're doing the test. So, anyways, rules of engagement. How you're going to handle what you find, permission to test, and so on. So there's some great stuff here. Again, this is the pre-engagement section of the Pen Testing Execution Standard. Now, when you move on to things like maybe we'll look at, as part of this class, you do a live bug bounty. And we will see here, for example, Grammarly. So if you do a bug bounty, we have these in place for us. In fact, here are the rules. And we have a policy section, and this is for Grammarly currently, and of course there's payment terms there. So, but what's the scope of work? So you can take this, anything from Grammarly.com, .io, .aws.com, and so on. You can see the domains are allowed. You can see browser extensions are allowed, desktop apps, and so on, add-ons. You can see what does not qualify, what qualifies. Now, this is Grammarly specific. For this class, you might find something that would not dictate a non-qualifying bug from your target. but still is something interesting to keep in your notes and maybe put into the report used for this class. So there'll be some stuff here that you might find. A big one, of course, is like excluded self XSS, having user paste JavaScript in the browser console. And for example, maybe a certain types of activities found in a vulnerability scanner are not part of your actual bug bounty through HackerOne that will be reported back, but you want to keep those in your notes, and you want to use those for this class, because in this class you can create a final report of your pen test activity. So in any case, you can use this to create your contract, and that's actually one of the things you do during this week. I will leave that into a different video, but you will create a contract using your pen. You can use the pen test execution standard. You can make up some stuff up if you like, but you're going to definitely need scope of work, rules of engagement, disclosure policy, and any critical items from your client or your company from this. So in any case, that should wrap it up. It gives you an idea about the scope of, and again, every time you do an engagement, it's going to be different. There could be different items in there, but now you have some things to go look at, like the pen test and execution standard, and also some resources like SANS to help you sort of at least narrow down and create a good contract. So that is topic 2, scoping and pen testing. Thank you.